This is the launch. This is the launch of two new books: Pluto, Psychodynamics of the Shadow and Complexes, and Cogito, Alchymicum, the Alchemy of a Symptom. The event is hosted by Tereza Bartova from Prague, Czech Republic, and author Matjaž Regovec. Tereza, you may start.
Thank you. So, yeah, my name is Tereza Bartova. I live in Prague, Czech Republic, and I'm a Matjaž student. I'm also a dedicated student of the Faculty of Astrological Studies, and I just love the faculty, and thank you all for being here. But let me start introducing Matjaž, because this is Matjaž's show, and he just published 2 new books. So just briefly, Matjaž holds 2 doctorates in psychology and philosophy, and he's an independent qualified Jungian psychoanalyst and psychotherapist in private practice. He's also the founder of the IPAL Institute in Ljubljana, Slovenia, where he lives, and where he has supervised the institute's tutors since 1993. He holds online seminars for participants from all over the world. These seminars are on psychoanalysis, philosophy, and the IPAL method, which I find absolutely amazing, and I hope we'll have time to tell you more about this method today. But our main goal for this session is to launch the books. So let's start. And as a Gemini, because I'm a Gemini, surprisingly, I would like to start with a question concerning a duality. So, you know, it's quite unique. You published 2 books at the same time. Have you ever done it before, Matjaž? Why 2 books at the same time?
Well, I really cannot answer this question, and I know you like duality, and they are kind of a continuation. One leads to another, because Pluto as the archetype and planet of the depth and transformation is really informative of the second book on the alchemy of symptom, which I hope I can say as well a little bit about. The majority of you haven't seen that book yet, but you may have seen Pluto, some of you at least, because it was published in some languages before, in Slovenian, Serbian, Hungarian, and now in English. So yeah, so this was the original books published in Slovenian and Serbian, and then they were published, I think, in 2011. And now finally, I found a way how to publish Pluto, and then I was writing this Alchemy of Symptom since October last year, and it came to fruition in parallel to my seminars I have been given in my astrology, cosmology, psychoanalysis, alchemy series online.
Yeah, so it's a synchronicity, I guess.
Maybe it does look like one. Yeah, it certainly is, you know, but when you're in it, when you work for it, you know, and you edit it, and of course you work with a publishing team, and then you publish it, it feels like sometimes it's hard work, but it's really rewarding. Yeah. It's the most rewarding thing besides writing and lecturing, I guess, and working practically.
Yeah, and in any case, congratulations. It's amazing.
Thank you. I'm accepting this congratulation, and I really appreciate it.
I had the opportunity to read the first book. I haven't read the second yet. So I would like to, you know, for the start, I would like to ask you a question about the Pluto book. You make it quite clear in the preface that actually the book is your love letter to Pluto, I would
Yeah.
say.
Yes,
You say that Pluto is about the sheer love of life,
well,
which
yeah. You know, it has been my personal journey, which was always somehow connected to Pluto, starting with the faculty studies at the Faculty of Astrological Studies, which took me on a journey to travel to London in the early 90s, where I did my faculty partly by correspondence and then by physical presence, as well as the Center for Psychological Astrology. I was looking for some depth, you know, I was journey into the depths. And of course, my Pluto is in the 9th, conjunct Uranus, so it had to be both. It had to be depth and astrology. And so I had these 2 courses, diploma courses at the faculty and the Center of Psychological Astrology. So no wonder, you know, I was really wondering, I was really curious and very mercurious with my Mercury on the MC and Gemini on the Descendant to find a new environment abroad where I was initiated into this kind of in-depth study, in-depth journey. So the whole journey, the whole study, and then founding the school in Slovenia in 1993, and then doing the seminars for 30 years. And so that's really a Plutonian journey. Also the psychoanalytic journey, which I did in terms of my own exploration and then training, was of a Plutonian kind. It taught me, you know, humility, really. And I think that is a very, very precious, sometimes maybe for a man, to learn about humility. You know, you may excel, you may be brilliant, but you also have to learn humility. And you cannot have depth without humility. You have to be patient and wait. And then it slowly develops if you are patient enough and if you manage with your intuition to take the right steps and wait, of course, in some gestational period of which you have no knowledge of consciously, but you know they're there, you intuit them, and then somehow you slowly walk back to the surface. So the book on Pluto arrives almost 30 years later, when I started with Pluto, with my studies, astrology and psychological astrology in London, and then Jungian psychoanalysis in Vienna. And I remember, you know, the story with Pluto in my diploma thesis, my CPA diploma thesis. This is where I met, at the CPA, I met Melanie Reinhardt, Darby Costello, Charles Harvey, Erin Sullivan, and, you know, and Liz Green. And I was writing the diploma thesis, and of course it was on Pluto. And my knowledge of English was not so fluent as then, so my language was quite awkward. And that was partly the reason why she had so much difficulty to read it, but also the way I approached Pluto, she said, was in the way she never thought it would be possible. Then she was interrupted by reading that diploma thesis all the time, and then she went on a train from Zurich to Ljubljana to give a seminar in Ljubljana. And then finally she had these 12 hours in which she could not be interrupted. She was somehow sealed in that coupe of the train. So she came through it and she said, congratulations, this is the thesis. We were, with Liz, we were planning to publish this thesis, but then our relationship terminated. So we didn't have any chance to publish that. We became friends again later, but we had this separation which prevented the publication of Pluto. So I had to do it later on my own, and then first in Slovenian, Serbian, Hungarian, and now finally in English. So it's quite a personal journey which really changed me. And you know, it's the love of life, really. You know, this journey. When I look back, of course, it has been quite difficult, but ultimately rewarding.
Yeah. However, Matjaž, we are talking about Pluto here, and I just have to ask you, have you ever been afraid of Pluto?
Of course, I was very much afraid of Pluto as much as I was fascinated. So that combination gave me the incentive to explore nevertheless, and then go into my own analytic journey. And be again in a foreign environment in Vienna, which was quite a humiliation comparing to London, because it is a different environment, and you don't call people by their first names, for example. So I was quite came to a different environment, did another training. I was driving from Slovenia to Austria for this training for another 6 years. And it taught me to think differently again. And and then the Jungian circle is quite defensive of astrology in some way, and not personally, they know their charts, but they somehow the Jungian organization does not want to incorporate astrological techniques for the treatment and for the personal journey. So in the end, I had to separate again. So I had to find my own way of working with all of those sciences: psychoanalysis, psychological astrology, and symbolic astrology, cosmology, as I call it, in order to, with the tutors at the Institute in Ljubljana. So we came to a certain technique, which we call the IPAL method.
Yeah, which brings me to my other question, because the book's title is Psychodynamics of the Shadow and Complexes, and we as astrologers are quite used to deal with Pluto themes as well as the shadow. But could you, at least for me, explain in a nutshell what is a complex, and can we find it in a birth chart? Can we find a complex in a birth chart? Because the book really deals with complexes. There's a whole chapter about it.
The in-depth view of man as a psychic being, a human being as a psychic being, as a psychological and psychic dimension, is really the terrain, which is a psychic landscape. And once you start travel, as you may all know, exploring dreams, active imagination, the images from your unconscious, it's a different kind of experience from the bodily experience with the senses, or what you think in terms of your concepts, or what you intuit spiritually. The psychic landscape has a different kind of logic, which you have to learn. And once you learn this logic, you see that we are all conditioned by certain gravity of this landscape, which holds our personal historicity. For example, if you experienced an abandonment in your childhood, then this abandonment, unless processed, will repeat again and again, and you will experience some painful separations. And until they are realized, they will have a certain gravity. They will somehow draw you towards those experiences. So with your birth chart, you can actually explore the dynamics of the genesis, both of a complex and the way you travel. And there will be certain points in your birth chart that will point to this process more directly, and some of them more indirectly. But there will always be a gateway, which is Scorpio and Pluto, the houses that contain Scorpio and Pluto, that will drag you down into the psychological understanding, where you will be able to explore your psychological landscape. And you know, I have Pluto in the 9th, so unless I go abroad, and of course my study in England, in London, and in Vienna in different ways, and then working with groups with Scorpio having in the 11th, I would not be able to, you know, to really go into the depth and see my own landscape. And if you look at Pluto, the way it is placed in your birth chart, there will be this entrance to your psychic landscape and Scorpio, and of course aspects it forms and the houses involved. So you will see how you are preconditioned emotionally, psychologically, in terms of the complexes, certain experiences that you are prone to and that you gravitate towards, and you don't understand until you work on yourself in depth, in some depth, and in a suitable conditions with a therapist, astrological counselor who is skilled enough in this work, or Ipal method, any kind of work where you can really, that really can hold up the depth dimension. So the whole terrain is the shadow. The whole terrain of the unconscious is the shadow. And we want to explore this terrain gradually, slowly, and of course with love. And you have to be tender. If you are too aggressive, to no avail is your journey and your effort. So you have to find the right attitude and the right relationship to do this. So the key to Pluto is intimacy, right? It's intimate. It's usually intimate, so it needs a relationship on 4 eyes of a couple, working couple that can make it work in therapy, in life, in close friendships, of course, in intimate partnerships, in the family. So it's about discreetness, and it's about really loving each other, being able to show love to each other, which includes empathy and patience, I would say.
It's wonderful.
Of course, and I think one more thing, and not to judge, really, not to judge with your mind and with your concepts, what is good, what is not good, and really being able to just to stay and observe what is happening, which may be one of the most difficult things in life, really, not to judge and accept another person as they are. Accepting yourself as you are, the imperfect being, individuating perpetually and never finishing process it is, and having some mercy for yourself, not to be too harsh on yourself. I remember Melanie, when I was studying at the CPA and we had the supervision groups, and Melanie said, don't be too harsh on yourself, right? And I still remember that. And I think it's really important not to judge yourself as well. You are imperfect being. You have to show acceptance to yourself, first of all. So that's why I see Pluto as the archetype and planet of love. Maybe it's no coincidence, in the meantime, from the first edition of Pluto in 2011 and 2024, Pluto probe came to, the New Horizons probe came to the planet, and the first physical image became available was that of the heart. Yeah. So as if Pluto was saying, you can see me, but with your heart.
Amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. I was so amazed. I think it was in July 2015 that the probe, end of June or July, I think it was July 2015, and my father has just died. And I did my first doctorate on the 1st of July. And then I saw this heart. I said, this is it. I knew it. There is a heart in Pluto, on Pluto. And I was it was a very important time for me. I had Pluto square in my sun at that time. My son in the 9th. So I did this doctorate in psychology. My father died just 2 weeks before that. And then there was this Pluto visit. It would sound weird, but I don't know which of the 3 events is more important. It's no, they are one at the archetypal level. They are one and the same.
Yeah. You know, Matjaž, that I find the book exceptionally great.
Why is that?
It's full of unique ideas, unique to me at least, you know, and it has really validated my experience of Pluto. Let's say I have had more major Pluto transits since actually 2011, when I started studying astrology. And yeah, and it has been a long transformation process. At the beginning, you know, I was really terrified by every you know, every separate transit, but now I can say that, you know, it has changed me for the better. And so when I was reading that your preface and that Pluto is about the sheer love of life, it really made me deeply happy. And yeah, it's just great.
It is also Pluto that brought me back now, that has brought me back to the faculty. So because
Yes.
I was invited to teach at the Faculty of Astrological Studies for the summer school for the 5th time now. So, you know, somehow I came back where I started my Pluto journey. So I really felt not obliged, but quite appropriate to, you know, to publish this book at this time. And there is also a little tribute in the book to the faculty and to the president, Cox, which you will find somewhere between the lines.
Yes, if I may, just last question about Pluto. My favorite idea from the book. You say that when Pluto is at work, we want something very badly. However, that's exactly what we are not going to attain. And it is not we who work on Pluto, but it's Pluto working on us. And we can only work on the process, not on Pluto.
On ourselves.
But it is absolutely critical for ourselves to ask for being reborn.
It is an opportunity to.
Yeah, I love this idea that it's really critical, you know, to ask for being reborn, because to me it's like this is the way out of the darkness, actually, to set a goal, you know, to you know, for being reborn, to ask for it and to follow this goal despite of all the obstacles and doubts. Just like,
well, you know, not exactly, because one part of the journey is also to be very powerless, quite powerless. And
yes, but with this goal in mind.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to let it go.
Yeah. In mind, it's you know, you use beautifully the story of Lord of the Rings in the book.
That is really, I'm really glad I did that story. I analyzed that story. I think, yeah.
Yeah. And so, yeah, it's to me, it's, you know, I think
it's the transference of power, you know, how do we accrue personal power, you know. It's also in the Red Book. Jung's Red Book, how he was powerless at the beginning of the journey. So then he had to follow the spirit of the depths, and he almost was disintegrated, in the process. His ego almost suffered some psychosis, but then he returned after this journey to the depths where he was reborn. So it's a kind of a similar story to the Lord of the Rings. But in the Lord of the Rings, you have this king who disappeared and who got mad, the Theoden king. And then he eventually, with the help of the hobbits, he regained the power from the Pluto archetype, from the depths, where all other creatures had to do the journey. The hobbits, actually, the auxiliary functions of yourself. When you don't function, you still live on, and you still can explore, even if you are sick, powerless. Even if you can't do anything, you can still observe reality, inner reality, and somehow try to come through. And then in the end, you will be reborn, sometimes in your next life, but sometimes already in this very life.
Matjaž, Frodo's goal from the very beginning of his journey was to destroy the Ring of Power. So I want to ask, does the Ring of Power represent the ego's need for control? And should this be one of our goals when we are going through a Pluto transit?
The obsession with power, with the collective power, is one of the very painful issues that we all have to face. There are people who have collective power, and they don't know very much how to use it. So instead of working on themselves, they're using the collective power in ways that is not always to the benefit of humanity. And history had always such, leaders who were actually, either that or that. For example, if you take Gorbachev, he constructed the whole Soviet system at the end of the era, so there was no war. And then you have some other politicians where utterly the power consumes them, and millions of people have to die because of that. So there is a long journey, not always successful, from the transference of the collective power, the archetypal power, into a personal journey, and then eventually into your personal power. Yeah. So that you can actually do what you want, that you can actually pursue the activities you love with your heart. You have to develop power, but you have to do the journey first. So if the collective gives you power, it's very easy to misuse it sometimes, sadly. But this is how humanity learns. Unfortunately, it is a long way, both collectively and individually, to learn how to use the power appropriately and to the benefit of both the collective and the individuum. So I think what Frodo does in this story is how a little man sometimes can do much more than the greatest, the most powerful man who is in position of power, but obsessed with power. He does nothing. They do nothing. Yeah. So it's really on the individual that has to do the journey. So unless there is enough individuums who do this journey, humanity will not change. And it does change bit by bit, and we learn, but we forget again. So the journey has to be undertaken again and again. And so the only option is really to work on yourself, really, if you want to do something for humanity. Also, you can do something socially, but ultimately you have to work on yourself. As you do, Tereza. I know you do.
Yeah, I think we all do.
Yes.
That's why we are here. Anyways, Matjaž, you wrote the book, or you held you have these seminars on which the book is based 30 years ago, right?
Yes, I did that after my diploma thesis at the city. I
Yes,
did a
yes,
series of 4 seminars, and then I recorded the seminars, and then I did the book on those seminars.
yeah. Would you write anything in a different way now?
Yes, I would, definitely. I probably will not write that way because I have found another way of writing, which is in this book. This is the Alchemy of Symptom, the last book. And it's based on the 10 seminars, but this time I did the text first. I did the chapter before each seminar I gave online. And I found this to be much more my formula. I tried to copy like Liz Green and other authors did the seminars book, right? And I said, I thought this must be good, but for me, this works better. I mean, this book on the alchemy of a symptom is much more, how shall I say, well worked through. The ideas are much more pronounced and worked through, and more extensive research, which is also based on the practical work with patients individually and working with groups. By the way, this is the image from Crete where I wrote this book in Libyan Sea. So I made this photo, and I asked the designer to put the whole photo on the unabridged, except for this little code, which has to be here. And so it was part of the nature that, the nature so helpful for writing. But writing in advance, I think now is my formula, and then give a seminar.
Mm. And so could you please tell us in a nutshell what the book is about?
Oh, this is so this is a difficult undertaking, but I'll try to make a brief outline, and then I hope we can discuss a little bit. I'm going to share a scheme, a diagram which I use for this book. It's a book on symptoms and that we all suffer from, and that we all experience, not necessarily suffer, because I see symptoms as something positive, as a signpost for man's journey in the individuation process. How do we progress? We are really motivated by our symptoms. Yeah? Sometimes by necessity, but some symptoms are not such a nuisance. Like, for example, some compulsive thoughts, sometimes they're not so difficult, but thoughts come and go, right? And sometimes they can be symptomatic because they start to be more aggressive. And then, there is something there. Or, for example, you may be particularly psychologically vulnerable at certain points of your life. And you look at your transits, of course, to see what kind of transit is triggering them. But there are also symptoms. And they can be used as a signpost to do something, to do some work on ourselves. And then there are also what I call spiritual symptoms. In this, I will go back to this just to explain this spiritual territory, or where the intuition has to work, and the personal spirit, of which the symptoms I see, for example, depression, I see as a spiritual symptom because it is a loss of your personal spirit. You can't go on. You've lost meaning, which is a particular spiritual product of your personal spirit. You have no energy. You feel low in your psychic energy as well, but it's the loss of the spirit. So, and then, of course, there are bodily symptoms which pertain to this sphere here. So we have experienced bodily symptoms, even itchiness, allergy, eczema, like typical skin problems, they can be seen as signposts, like an eczema or itchiness can be seen as, or allergy, as a problem of boundaries that are currently set between you and the environment. So you may like to think about those boundaries, and they are a signpost, and also, if I may say, an inspiration, if you see them positively, for us working on ourselves. In all cases, it is a symptom that seems to want something, that has a mission of changing our thinking. In most of the cases, we have to change our thinking, have to see it differently. So if you want to change your boundaries between yourself and the environment, between yourself and your boss, then you have to think about it. So you have to change the way you see it, right? So that's the thinking, what I call the thinking cogito, what you think, your personal mindset. It wants to change the way you see it, and your symptom may be used in that way. You see, so the symptom may lessen. In other words, but it also means it may be integrated into your thinking. So you change your thinking and your symptom changes as well. So that is a simple example. But why I just want to describe this diagram, just to, why is this together? The intuitive field, the psychic field, and its cogito, and the bodily field, they are all together, and the mind is here away from them. Well, it's a general realization from the cognitive science on one hand, and philosophy on the other, that human mind is something eccentrically positioned. It's very autonomous. It thinks what it will and what it fashions quite independently in relation to the being, to your wholeness of being, which is intuitive, psychic, and bodily being. The way you are connected to yourself, you are not away from yourself with your body. You're not away from yourself with your psyche. You're not away from yourself with your personal spirit, but you are away indeed with your mind, because with your mind you can travel everywhere. You can think anything, you can learn anything, but how does it relate to you? How does it relate to your wholeness of being? You can even become very artificial with your mind. You can even use artificial intelligence as yours. You can write books with artificial intelligence. It's not even yours, right? So it's the collective. It's online and so on. It's on the internet. So, but when you come to this 3 dimensions of man's wholeness, you can no longer fake it. You can no longer fake it. It's the authenticity, right? That is in your intuition, in your psychic inner landscape, in your body. That's the source of your authenticity. So what I did in this book, now there is another part of the scheme which I'm going to discuss in the next book, which is individuation, individual image of God. And now, how, I don't want to go into that now, just in order to stay focused, just to say what the book is about. So I was exploring, I was thinking, I was pondering the ways of how to explain the role of the symptom on one hand, and then looking at the zodiac, the cosmological mandala, how, well, I want to share this, just stop share here. And if you look at the structure of the zodiac, this is the event, this is our event. So you can see how these 4 elements that are connected to the 4 dimensions of a human, of man and woman, are structured, right? So the very structure of the zodiac was my inspiration. For example, if you have a psychic symptom, for example, in Cancer, of being overly attached, yeah, of overly attachment, of over connectedness with your mother, with your family, with your origins, there are squares to Aries, yeah, and there is a square to Libra, and there is an opposition to Capricorn. So there must be ways that help you to integrate your symptom by employing these other archetypes. And the science that does that, or that did this already, is the alchemy. So I looked into the alchemical tradition for the images that I would be able to connect with those shifts from psychic understanding, Cancer, from the way my psychic symptoms, my over attachment on my personal family, how does my personal spirit in Aries, my direction, my meaning, my individuality, there is some microphone on, please, and how do you what are the processes that can be used to help you, to help us integrate the symptom. So once you, for example, once you activate, in this case, it would be relationships, where or other people help you activate your personal spirit of what you want to do in life. This will actually help you to understand your symptom and put it relative to your personal will, of your own personal wishes you want to do. And there may be a relationship that may be helpful in this respect. I can't go into details now, somehow my mind doesn't work here now, but these processes are really described in some detail with the help of the alchemical images in the book. And I mainly use the Atalanta Fugians images, which I find particularly telling. They're from the 17th century. Is just when at the start of the new era, and the age of Aquarius, the man, the Cogito, the birth of Cogito, because it is because I think, I feel, intuit, and sense that I exist, right? So it's the birth of the ego, the birth of the man, of man as a center creator of what he or she does in their work on themselves. So by placing a symptom, already by placing a symptom into your birth chart, so is it either overconnectedness, water archetypes? Is it isolatedness, which is typical of the airy archetypes, Libra, Aquarius, Gemini, or is it, is it bodily symptoms, Capricorn, Taurus, Virgo, or symptoms of your personal spirit, of your vision, seeing your direction, problems with seeing direction in life, being depressed, Aries, losing your heart, Leo, yeah. You see, losing your heart, losing your courage and devotion, and which can happen, and trust, yeah, that you are authentic, losing touch with your heart. Essentially, when you place this already, by placing them into the cosmogram, what I call cosmogram or birth chart, you can start working with them, and then you have these relationships with other archetypes that serve as a guidepost for the journey, for seeing what is happening, and then so you can work on yourself with more orientation and trust.
I have to say that it still seems quite complex to me.
I know, I'm sorry.
However, I was a participant in your seminars on which this book is based, and I can say that it's really
But there's some parts you could
practical.
Was it some parts that you could understand well? Or was it understandable at
well,
all? Or?
I can say honestly that listening to you during these seminars, I could understand you. I could follow you because you were showing us pictures, and really, yeah, I could follow. And it sounds quite intellectual, but it's not. It's very practical, and I have to say that it has really helped me to put my life in order, you know, to realize
with a symptom, to work with a symptom, maybe,
and to work with my symptoms. Yeah, I don't want to talk about my symptoms now, but it has really helped me. And yeah, I would say that you have made my brain hurt. Really. However, it was worth it because it was like, you know, I thought I understood something, you know, but you have showed me the basics from a different point of view, like from the high above and then from the very center. And it's, for me, it's now I see astrology, or for me now astrology is not anymore like mostly an intellectual subject. It became really it entered all the 4 dimensions of my being, so to say. Yeah, so thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to reading your book. I hope I will be able to understand it. Yeah, and is there anything, you would like to add to, you know, to...
Well, I would also like to hear from the people here. If they have something to say or ask, that would be helpful. But just maybe one more thing that, that, you know, that really the non-intellectual level is really the stuff we are made of. You know, as Shakespeare said, you know, the stuff we are made of, the dreams, the psychological, but also the bodily symptoms, and then the personal spirit. This is not a Jungian model. This is a model that includes the 4 dimensions of man and woman. And, you know, the personal spirit is not yet debatable at all. You know, we don't speak about personal spirit, but personal spirit is there. You know, each person has a personal spirit, and it's described by Aries, Leo, Sagittarius, you know, and some planets. So, you know, and the pathology that pertains to the spirit, not just to the psyche, you know, and not just to the body. And also there is a mind pathology, you know, the compulsive thoughts, for example, you know, the prejudices, for example, you know, the prejudices, they're so symptomatic, no, symptomatic or symptomatic. And then symptoms, they're so obvious that we don't talk about them, as if medicine has, you know, prevented us from saying, I have symptoms, I don't have to be ill to have symptoms. We all have symptoms because we individuate. That's the reason. So no need, you know, to be afraid of symptoms and to name them. You know, I have symptoms. You know, what is, so if would it be allowed for an astrologer to say, no, and a client said, hello, good day to you, what are your symptoms, you know? You know, we're still not there because we're still thinking, we have to be ill, we have to have something on the body, but symptoms are really, they're not just a domain of medicine and psychotherapy. They're signposts, they're symbols of our individuation process that has to be helped, accommodated, facilitated.
And they are trying to help us, right?
It's interesting. Are they alive beings? Maybe they're some kind of, that they're not like gremlins, or but but a cat produces symptoms for you. A dog produces symptoms for you. Your partner produces symptoms. Your children produce symptoms. Your clients produce symptoms that are for you, that are meant, that are a gift, Christian, a Geschenk for the relationship. It's symptomic. The relationship has to do. So I have produced this beautiful thing. I'm jealous, for example. So a Scorpio symptom, of overconnectedness. It means I love you really, but it hasn't been processed yet. So I'm still jealous. So it is a gift. It is what the alchemists would call the prima materia of what you cook on, work on, in order to become more noble, more developed, more integrated, not necessarily, as you say, more intellectual. And it has to be there in different kinds of ways. And it's your birth chart that says in which, it's the path of your individuation, which is really important. Shall we give some space to, if somebody wants to comment? I would be so, it would make the whole event much more whole if some of you would be courageous to say something, comment, or ask, please. Yeah, Kat?
Oh, it's so lovely, Matjaž, to hear you talk about your journey and to talk about your work. And particularly when you're talking about Pluto and Lord of the Rings and the journey of power, I guess I'm sitting with just how relevant this feels right now at this collective moment where you say, humanity has to remember and remember and remember to wake up, to work with power, to integrate it, to use it well, rather than get caught up in the collective. So I'm just sitting with this, this very extraordinarily, what feels like very extraordinarily challenging time right now collectively. I just wondered, I wondered about your reflections on that, bringing this to the now.
And I will just say maybe one thing. I would never ever think of not going to Russia at this time, because I have been working with the Russian group for 5 years, and I never thought my relationship with those lovely people there would change a bit. And I think one has to see through the collective events, not to judge them, not to judge the people really, and because it's two very different things. I don't know if I said something meaningful, but
Yeah, so I think we're being pushed to get polarized, aren't we, in so many directions?
We are pushed to be polarized since that, and I remember your Kat saying at the Faculty Open Day, since Saturn Pluto conjunction in Capricorn, which polarized our social life, and it's so difficult to see through the polarizations and the fearful messages that we are sometimes getting, and to see it to continue to see it in a human way, and not to get too afraid, still not lose heart and courage to go on with whatever we do. And really try to work together in this spirit, continue to work together in this spirit, despite despite this collective, polarizations. I think it's so important.
And I wonder your response. It does seem to be a time with such pressures that some people are being able to see through this, just as you describe. I don't know if you would think of this as a kind of a limbic period where, with the collective pressures, we have the opportunity to see through some of this.
Yes. Well, if I was, when I was younger, I was more, didn't see much, and much in this sense. And I remember when I came to London and to study in 1992, and I was really, my Slovenian passport was a blue passport nobody knew about, and we didn't have the war, but we were close to Bosnia, so everybody was saying, "Are you from Bosnia? Are you a Bosnian refugee?" And I really got offended. I wouldn't now, because it's ignorance of the people. So your national, you have to be above or below the national identity. You have to work it through. You will see that people are people, and they individuate in every culture in the same way. They all have transits, but you have to be careful with some groups of people, I would say, that aren't there yet. So being courageous and cautious at the same time, I think that is so necessary at the moment. And respecting, I don't see these challenging times that, that people divide into pro-vaccine and anti-vaccine. I don't believe in that. I think that everybody has to do their own way. That was one example, or what they think about the war, the two war zones at the moment. And I don't think they should be approached on that basis or judged on that basis. They should really go beyond that. So, I didn't take the COVID vaccine, but not because I'm an anti-vaccine. I think some people need it, because this is the way they survived. I did because I had the conditions, because I had minimal contacts. And anyway, so I did the risk for myself, but not everybody understands that. So now it's when we have some distance from that, it's okay, but you weren't able to discuss some things at some point, which I think is very important. Yeah. And I think astrology is really where we go beyond that, because we get the archetypal language, which knows no such stereotypes, and and especially the individuation process. We want to become individuums, but we are all, in order to become individuums, we have to be in relationship with each other. There is no individual without relationships. You cannot be an individual if you don't have a community and a collective. So I think the summer school is also such a beautiful event that you organize, because there are people from the whole world, and we will be having many sessions there with Christian, Melanie, Darby, you, Dragana, and all other speakers that give an impression or a sense of experience of the whole of the world there. I think it's one of the rare events where we can really do that on a world basis, like a navel of the world, which is so rare, really, and not to be institutionalized in any other way. Actually, not privately, because its faculty is of private, but it's built of individuals. It is not a collective governmental from above down organization that one has to obey. But so it's one of the rare. So I'm really happy that we can go on with this.
Yes, indeed. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, Matjaž.
somebody else who wants to say something, you're most welcome. I know sometimes it's difficult to say something on this online way, but this is, in this sense, in this case, it is really the unique way we can come together from the world. You know.
I spoke a lot today.
Sorry?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I'm quite happy with
Good.
what has been said. I think it's great.
I will certainly bring some copies to Oxford, so you will be able to browse them, and there will be some for sale there too. So as much as my luggage can take. But you can also order them by post, write to our mail, and until some UK publisher finds it interesting, so they will be available from the UK directly. But it will be on Amazon now already, so you will be able to. Alenka, are they on Amazon yet?
No, I don't think so.
Not yet. I think we have to wait for this opposition between the Sun and Pluto to get through.
Okay, is this
So
what you
it will
reckon?
be in 1 week at the latest. There are
Okay.
just minor things that we need to take care of.
Yeah, so there's obstacles, but hopefully we can make them through. We can make them work. We can make them integrate these obstacles. They help us to grow, I hope.
Matjaž, would you like to say something about the IPAL method, just briefly to introduce it?
Well, the IPAL method is just a procedure where you start with the psychic dimension. I will put this up again. You start with the psychic instead of, in order to prevent you from thinking too much or thinking about your life or thinking about your symptom, to start to participate in your symptom, in yourself. So to start with the psychic layer or the psychic dimension, that is start with an image from the dream. So either a dream image or active imagination. In practice, they are very similar. Dream images or images from the active imagination, they are very personal because they contain historicity. They are historical. They have both the childhood elements and the present elements. For example, there was a dream of man in his midlife that he had a numb left hand in his dream. So the left hand was numb. And he brought this image to work with. And when we worked with this image, we realized it's a very powerful psychic image, which is a symbol not only of his arm when he woke up that ached him, which was symptomatic or symptomic, to speak it more directly, but it has a history. He belongs to a generation that they were not allowed to write with your left or draw with your left hand. So he had to repress that activity and use the right hand, the right arm, the right hand instead. So it was a repression. But not only that, when we explored on, we realized, he actually did a beautiful drawing when he was in his high school, and the teacher actually says, well, this is a beautiful drawing. You should be really proud of your drawing abilities. So, and then he connected this artistic or expression-like activity with his left hand. So we had something to work on. So it was creativity that linked to that image. So we start with a psychic image, and then we connected it with real life, the bodily cogito. So what he can do with, so he can start drawing and enhance his relationship with his two sons. They started to draw together. So their relationship suddenly improved. The father-son relationship improved in that way. So that was that psychic and bodily part. And then looking into the chart, this image was connected with Pluto in the fifth. Pluto in the fifth, which means that the taboo, the repression, the underworld of his creativity was there to be uncovered by working on himself in depth, so that his creativity could be released. So meaning came out with the help of the cosmogram, with the help of the archetype that lied behind this image, producing meaning, because the archetype, when you connect with the chart, you produce meaning, which is highly personal entity stemming from the archetypes, being and its archetypes, that you can deduce from the cosmogram, from your birth chart. In this way, he could connect, find meaning, that it was somehow, okay, it was repressed, the left hand, creativity. He's a highly intellectual man working very proficiently in his intellectual work. But now this other side of his being, of his manhood, suddenly was uncovered. And although it is never too late. So, and although it was discovered in his entry into his 40s, there was still time. It was meaningful. He suddenly realized it is meaningful. He developed the other half for much of his life, but it's meaningful. It came out of the underworld. And so if you use astrology in that way, then this symptom of the numb left hand then changed his thinking, and he realized, I understand now conceptually. This has changed the way I think about left-handedness, creativity, drawing, relationships, all those kinds of things. A little shift in his thinking, Cogito, changed as a result. So that would be an example of the procedure that we use in the IPAL Institute with the group. So people learn, our students, they learn from active imagination first, and then placing it into their charts with the help of the tutors first. And then they can do it later, they can do it autonomously. Or the tutors, we meet up and we still work on ourselves once a month. Instead of going to theater on Saturday evening, we meet up and we do the active imagination or take up a piece of dream and then work with it, each after another, helping each other to do this kind of procedure in order to awaken, become aware of the psychic, through the psychic dimension, in order to grow and improve and work further on ourselves in depth. So this is a way. we were really at the institute, we were really thinking, how can we do this in another way, just to prove, because astrologers we are so smart as astrologers, aren't we? We know everything, but not necessarily actually. So if you contact the psychic landscape first, the Plutonian landscape first, then there is a possibility you circumvent the hypertrophied thinking Cogito, but to work on other layers first, so that you can then change your thinking and individuate as a result. That's the basic idea, and that's the practice of this method. And I'm really proud that it doesn't bear a personal name, because we really developed it in a group of tutors. We were thinking, we had dreaming group, dream interpretation group, then we had active imagination group, then we had some bodywork group, and of course astrology group. And then we were thinking how to put this together. And then in the end, this set of techniques came out, and it's just the IPAL. It has the IPAL name because there is no person, individual who did it together. And so it prevents any cult of personality or anything, just to have a method that is really a product of a group of people.
It's really amazing, practical.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's my Pluto in Virgo. I was leading this process, but I'm always, sometimes I'm obsessed with techniques, how to do something. I like horticulture. I have a winter garden in my own apartment, part of the wind. So I'm bringing plants from all over the world and grow them. My friends are witnesses. They have seen this garden. And I like cooking because this is all about techniques, the horticulture, the cooking, also working practically. Although I have no other earth in my chart, I like this kind of, technical somehow, finding some kinds of efficient ways of transformation. Yeah. Do we have another comment or question, or else we can round it off? Or so there is a last call for all passengers.
Someone might be hungry.
Oh, yeah, I haven't eaten yet. No. But there's a last call if there's some thoughts or comments. Melanie, please say something. You have to unmute your microphone first.
Well, first of all, just to say thank you for arranging this gathering where we could celebrate your wonderful achievements and hear a bit, about what you're doing. And as I've been listening to you, I feel like so many thoughts and perspectives are generated as I listen to you, that I felt a bit kind of struck dumb. I didn't know what to say. But a thought that was kind of developing alongside listening to you and also listening to Kat, your comment, was a whole thing about the age of Aquarius. And I remember some years ago I did a piece on the age of Aquarius. I don't know if faculty open day or anyway, something to do with the faculty. And one of the things that I included, which I still love, is in Nick Campion's book, Book of World Horoscopes. I still only have the first edition, but it's one of my treasures. It's all completely falling apart now. I've had it so long. But in there is a chapter concerning when the age of Aquarius is due to start, according to all these very worthy, intelligent astrologers, okay? And the range of dates where they say the age of Aquarius starts, it's more than 1,500 years between the earliest one and the latest one, okay?
It is, yes.
So that itself is amazing. But partly from that, you know, the age of Aquarius is often spoken of as the new age or the age of awakening or all of these things. So I think at the level of ideas about the age of Aquarius, it's always coming. It's in the future. So all the people, well, there are some exceptions, but all the people who wrote about when it was going to start, it's always in the future. And what occurred to me was the relevance of astrology as a way of deepening our experience of the now and giving us a language to describe what's happening now in a way that is so enriching, rather than sending our energy out into the future on some disputed date where this thing is going to happen, you know. But I also, sort of in parallel with that, I was thinking about the age of Aquarius and its opposite sign, which is Leo. And I personally don't have any favorite date of all the ones that I read about when it's going to start. You know, I don't have a personal favorite, but I do seem to be seeing more and more and more of this particular polarity of the Leo and the Aquarius, sometimes both in their hazardous forms, you know. And I find that very instructive. So that the motif of the relationship between the individual and the group and what's required on both sides of that in order that something truly remarkable can happen. So I'm getting glimpses of that as I listen to you, like when you described the way the founding group of IPAL had worked. And also, you know, I think without a real journey into the depths of our own individual soul journey, you know, our way of relating to groups or within groups will probably consist largely of residue from our original family or our original culture. In other words, just made up of conditioned responses. But then the more individual we can become from the work of our own inner journey, maybe there are all kinds of new ways to relate to a group or to be in a group. So this is something that interests me greatly. And I was inspired to hear that. Well, I heard that theme in what you were saying about your own work. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Melanie. Yes, I think you made a wonderful transition to an interpretation of, and I really like the idea that, you know, we are doing it now. We're doing it now. So it's not in the future. Actually, for me, it is with a new era, not the new age, you know, with the birth of the new continent.
Yes.
Not just in
Yes.
geography, but in philosophy of the ego and cogito. Because before that, it was all,
yes,
we have to find out what God thinks. God created us. And now it's like, I create the way I see, the way I feel, the way I intuit. So it's all there. So it's no longer a theodicy, it's anthropodicy. And if this is not the age of Aquarius emerging,
yeah,
you know, and the wonderful Cartesius who said, because of Cogito, this is why I am. And then Galileo said, You know, he realized you are not at the center. And Copernicus and all those people. So we are moving all the time. The center is in your perception, action, and creation.
Yeah,
It's
so
the center, the way we see cosmos. Yes,
so like the whole notion of
it
the
changes
sun
all the time.
as the center has gradually become more and more internalized compared to, you know,
more
100 years ago.
anthropocentric. Yeah, anthropocentric, man-centered.
Yeah,
The way he or she sees and creates collectively and individually, as you say. If this is not age of Aquarius, the man, I don't know what is. I mean, if it's not happening now, then, you know, and especially with Pluto in Aquarius, it's there. You have to take it for that. We are in the very temple of humanity. Has to be recognized as sacred. Everything we do and we don't do depends on us, does not depend on external God coming from another world. It's what we do here. It's no longer out there. It's here. It's very dangerous as well because man is playing God as well. Very easily. Anyway, maybe for another occasion to discuss. Thank you.
Would you like to add anything? Just saying thank you to everybody for coming.
I think there is a barrier here. There is a barrier that has to be crossed, and it takes effort to step into the group and say something. But I can feel there is some intention almost penetrating through this. But if not now, it can also be said later or at the summer school or anywhere. Maybe later. So Tereza, are you going to?
I'm waiting.
Are you going to say goodbye?
Yes, so thank you everybody for being here with us today. Thank you for coming. I'm so looking forward to meeting you personally again at the summer school this year. And yeah, Matjaž's books are going to be there. So yeah, so see you. Thank you. Thank you, Matjaž.
Thank you, Tereza, everybody, to be here
Thank
with me,
you.
with Tereza, Alinka, and everybody.
Have a wonderful Saturday.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Everybody,
Bye-bye.
thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye,
Bye.
guys.
Thank you.